Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Welcome to episode 90, the big 9-0 of the Falcoholic Live. I'm your host, Kevin Knight, joined by my co-host, Mr. Adnan Ikic. You know him as @SayWhичWay on Twitter. And we are here to bring you some trade deadline talk about the trade deadline that never was. Not just for the Falcons, for pretty much everyone, unfortunately. We're also going to get into some salary cap talk. And, of course, since we're at 7 losses now officially, it's the start of draft season, so we're going to get into some draft takes for you guys as well. Before we get things kicked off, I want to ask my co-host, Mr. Adnan Ikic, how are you doing tonight?
Oh, I'm doing very well. The other Atlanta teams are pretty solid right now that we don't have the Falcons anymore. Season's over before October ended.
Yep.
So, yeah, we have Atlanta United. The Hawks are looking good, and we have draft season.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, you guys know I don't know that much about basketball, but the Hawks were an entertaining watch, I thought, to start the season. So that's more than we can say about the Falcons. So, hey, not too shabby. And then I think Atlanta United's gonna potentially have the championship game played in Atlanta here soon, so that could be cool as well. So I hope I didn't just jinx everything. I apologize. But
If they lose, we'll just blame you.
yeah, it's all my fault. It's always been my fault. So, but yeah, let's kick things off with a little news. Unfortunately, it's a little bit lighter than we would like due to a pretty quiet trade deadline across the NFL. Most of the action seemed to happen on Monday, but I'm sure you guys have heard of it by now. Our very own Evan Birchfield broke the news that the Falcons had decided that their biggest issue was the kicking game, and they decided to cut Matt Bryant in favor of Younghoe Koo, who I don't dislike. I think he's one of the more intriguing guys that was out there. And welcome to our intrepid reporter himself. Say his name and he shall appear, Evan Birchfield. Evan, how are you doing this evening?
Doing well. How you guys doing?
Good, good. Well, I was just getting into the Matt Bryant news, but I will let you. You broke it, so I'll let you deliver it. Matt Bryant.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, cut in favor of the Younghoe Koo. So you broke the news. I'm sure you have some strong takes about it. I want to let you have an opportunity to get those out there.
I don't want to go on a rant, but I get why the move happened. He wasn't kicking, at what people thought we're used to, with Matt Bryant making 50-yard field goals used to be automatic. But, I was trying to figure out because I know a lot of people were throwing around that he's old and stuff like that, or he's hurt or whatever. He's not hurt, but the age thing, I find interesting because it's like 2018 was his most accurate season ever. And he's had a historic career with us. So age doesn't just hit you and then all of a sudden you're missing field goals like that. I think the off-season thing certainly didn't help, but also I'm not a kicking expert, but I imagine having, and I shared it on Twitter. I'll have to look and see the exact ones, but he's had different placeholders. Usually he has Matt Bosher, but obviously Matt Bosher got hurt. He's had Matt Schaub hold for him. He's had Matt Weil or whatever when he was on the team. This past game he had, I think his name's Casey Renford or whatever, the punter we just cut. Yeah. And I thought he had somebody else, but I mean that's probably playing into it, mechanics and stuff like that. I don't know. But he was pretty he was fine from within the 40. I know a lot of people look at the missed extra point, which obviously was bad timing because we would have tied that game and possibly would have went on to win against the Cardinals. But he was 14 of 15 for extra points if I remember correctly. I think the biggest thing is he was 2 for 6 over 50, which in the NFL. I think we were conditioned to think 50-yard field goals are automatic, but they really aren't if you look around the league. It's not an easy thing to make. But yeah, I just, it is what it is. I think I'd understand it a lot more if it was we were I don't know, at least some semi like in a playoff race or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But at 1-7, I mean, like the rest of the team is sucking. Why are we going to be like, well, let's get rid of the kicker? Like that's going to all of a sudden make us win games. I don't know. And it's like I think what pisses me off the most is the Falcon, how it was handled last or ending the season, where he made the game-winning kick against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in Week 17, and then they ended up cutting him. And then you bring him back, or first you have his replacement who then struggles, and you bring somebody in, and then you bring him back, and then you put on this charade of, oh, it was the plan all along, and then you get rid of it. Like he's got the most points scored in franchise history. I just hope folks don't focus on these last couple games and think, oh, he sucks at kicking. He should be, if you're going to put, you're going to put up contenders for the Ring of Honor, he certainly should be, because of games, the meaningful games he's, helped win. And a lot of people, give those early Matt Ryan comebacks, Matt Ryan full credit, but a lot of it helped with his leg. Matt Ryan would basically get him in the field goal range on those crucial drives at the end, and he would make the kick. And they worked hand in hand like that. And, it kind of sucks. But yeah, it's like the Falcons got a redo on how to send him out properly. Even if we only won one game this season,
right?
You lay out the red carpet treatment, and you're like, okay, well, this is his last game. I think it's against Tampa. It was like the same exact game in Week 17. I think it's at Tampa, and they just decide to cut him, mid-season. I mean, it's whatever. I obviously. I know everybody, loves Matt Bryant and stuff. I have a bias towards it, so I'm probably not the most fair person to ask, because, like, I think he, if my life was on the line, I'd have him back there kicking for me.
Yeah.
But, yeah, it's just, it's whatever. I think fans will look back on it as kind of like, well, that was handled, maybe not the best way it should have been, but, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think we can all agree that it was not handled in a good way. I mean, Bryant hadn't been up to what we expected of him, which is maybe why he was let go, I guess, because maybe the front office expected, perfect Bryant again, with no preseason, no training camp, and his holder seemingly changing like every week. Which, I mean, when I talked with Morton Anderson, another legendary Falcons kicker, he remarked upon how his kicking improved so much when they had full-time holders. It used to be that the holder was just the backup quarterback or somebody, it could change often. But once, you got all these special teams players, full-time long snappers and full-time punters and kickers, and people weren't doing double duty and all this. Like, it helped the kicking game get better at all levels because of that. And when you have your holder changing constantly, I mean, it's not something you can always point the finger to with every kick, but it does make a difference. I mean, that the trust that's there. And, Bryant and Bosher worked together for so long. You have to think that the loss of Bosher has something probably to do with the precipitous fall this year. But it's not even that, like, Bryant was that bad, like you were saying. I mean, he was, getting to be towards, the mid-20s in terms of his field goal percentage. His extra point percentage was excellent still. But in this last game, it wasn't like he missed 2 gimme kicks or anything. I mean, they were 50-plus yarders. They weren't, joke kicks. But it's frustrating for us to see him treated this way. And it's like if you wanted to go the young, it seems like they really wanted to go the young route, and then they panicked and brought him back because Giorgio Tavecchio did not work out, and now they've just gone back to the young route, but they're trying somebody else. So I guess that's maybe the only reason I could see for bringing in a young kickers, because you want to give him that audition for the rest of the season, because it's certainly not changing your season outcome. But
yeah,
Adnan, I'm sure
it's been a while since we've seen a Falcons kicker and punter basically cut in the same day.
Yeah,
after
yeah. Yeah, I don't know what Casey Redfern
lucky.
did. What did Casey Redfern do to deserve this? But Adnan, I'm sure you've got some takes about the Matt Bryant situation too, so definitely want to give you a chance to weigh in.
First of all, I want to congratulate Evan for breaking that story. Fantastic reporting work by him there. Even though the national media guys like Ian Rappaport and Adam Schefter did not give him any credit for it, which was absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just like it's
Yeah,
journalism.
but you guys
etiquette.
were out there fighting on Twitter for
Oh,
me, and
yeah.
I appreciate that. And I saw.
I mean, it's just like the etiquette of being a journalist to cite your sources, to aggregate.
Yep.
You know, I mean, that's what we try to do all the time at the Falcoholic, and it's just like, it's just really lame for them to, you know, try and claim it like for themselves instead of like, you know.
Right. They were only like 30 minutes late to the news, you know.
Yeah, and that was pretty ridiculous, but you know, it is what it is. That's the nature of the business. On to Matt Bryant. Um, it won't be popular, but I get it. I get why they moved on from him. I don't like the way they handled it at all. I and Thomas Dimitrov going on there and talking about how like it was the plan all along to bring back Matt Bryant after like cutting him. That was just like, that was a clown show at that point. Like, what are you even doing right there? But with Bryant, it really is a results oriented business, and he was one of the highest paid kickers in the league this year at $3 million. And he wasn't getting it done these past few games. So I understand moving on from him. I'm not going to bury the team for doing that. I will bury the team for not being consistent and for making it now seem with their moves seem like the problem was the kicking game. I think if they really wanted to be consistent with this being like results oriented, like I mentioned, they would have moved on from Dan Quinn in this bye week as well. But you know,
Yeah.
I apparently not.
Can't do that. Yeah.
But I'm excited for Young Wei Koo. He's someone who kicked for the Chargers. He got cut by the Chargers after struggling over there, but he was really, really good for the Atlanta Legends. Like, I don't think he missed a single kick for the Atlanta Legends. And, you know, I'm excited for him to get this opportunity. He's still a young guy. He's a local product, went to Georgia Southern here in Statesboro. So, you know, I'm excited for him to get his audition. I will give the Falcons credit that they did successfully pinpoint moving on from Matt Bryant after that last season ended. It was a very savvy Patriots-like thing where they recognized they were proactive with it, moved on. The only problem was that Tavecchio was absolutely awful in the preseason. If Tavecchio was a little better, we're not having this conversation at all, and the team doesn't look like, you know, like idiots for the way they handled that entire situation. But with Matt Bryant, his legacy, there's no chance that his legacy will only be these past few games where, you know, he struggled. This is someone who is the all-time points leader in Atlanta Falcons history. We signed him on in 2009. I still remember after Jason Elam missed 2 field goals against the Carolina Panthers in Carolina, where we lost that game by I think like 1 point. We signed Matt Bryant, and then for 10 years he was an absolute godsend. He made some of the biggest kicks in Atlanta Falcons history. He is stapled firmly in some of the biggest moments in Falcons history. That Seahawks kick for one. That's a top 5 moment in team history right there. The number 1 moment should be him kicking the icer against the New England Patriots in the Super Bowl, but you know, alas.
You know, there were certain things that happened maybe that didn't.
In a parallel universe, he gets that kickoff, and we're sitting here as Super Bowl champions. But I digress right there. But you know, much love, much thanks to Matt Bryant for everything he's done. He is someone who's made a lot of money in the NFL, and now I hope he enjoys the rest of his life with his wonderful family. And, you know, thank you for everything. And I just hope that his relationship with the front office isn't completely soured after this. Maybe after Thomas Dimitrov gets fired, it'll maybe be a little bit better.
I think
but
so.
He's someone who I definitely want as a guest in like future Falcons games, and quite possibly as a he has some Ring of Honor credentials, even depending on like what you think about, oh, he's a kicker or not. A kicker just like went into the Hall of Fame. So, you know, we're showing some love to the position.
Yeah. No, he absolutely is deserving of Ring of Honor. I think he's a shoo-in, and you know, like what you said is that no one's going to remember him having a poor season in a season where the team went 1-7. Like, I would say Bryant is like issue number like 12 or 13 out of like, you know, the other 22 starters or something. Like, he's such a minor issue in this season that I just don't think fans are really going to hold on to that. So I don't worry about his legacy, but I do think that the relationship, with this current front office is not good because of how the front office has handled things. If you're going to bring the guy back, like, you should probably, give him the benefit of the doubt and hold him. Or just move on, like they did. But moving on and then going back on it and then moving on again is just like, it's just makes the team seem like they don't know what they're doing, which I think is correct in this case. I think they didn't know what they were doing. So it'll be nice to see, if the team can have a reconciliation with him once this current front office is no longer in the picture, which I think we will be seeing in, T-minus eight or so games. But yeah, it's rough. It's always sad to see a franchise legend go, and it sucks that we have to like sit through it again after we just sat through it this offseason. Like, we could have just not done any of this, I feel like, but yeah, whatever. We just have to be tortured by this team. All right, let's get. I know a lot of people keep asking about the trade deadline stuff because it is important. So in case you guys didn't notice, the Falcons weren't able to move anyone else other than Sanu. They did manage that Sanu trade, which I think we all agree was a good trade, good compensation. It saves them a lot of money next year. It's just good all around. They were not able to move any of the other players they were interested in moving. Vic Beasley, I think, is not shocking to any of us because he's incredibly expensive and sucks. So I don't know, like, of those traits, I don't know why a team would trade us a draft pick to get him, to get a giant contract and a bad player. That doesn't make any sense to me. So that's not surprising. We heard some buzz that Trufant was potentially on the block, and that was like somewhat interesting to me. I wasn't necessarily trying to move on from him, but his contract is very expensive, and if you could get someone to take it and get good compensation, I guess I would be interested in seeing what the offer was. But that deal apparently never really got a lot of traction. And then the big one, obviously, is the potential Freeman trade, which we heard was close to fruition, and the Falcons ultimately rejected the trade because they didn't want to get rid of Freeman. So I'm sure there's a lot of takes in here. I certainly have some takes, but Adnan, I'll let you get the first crack at this one. What is your thought on the Falcons potentially having an opportunity to trade Freeman to Detroit and going back on that, because they quote unquote didn't want to?
Okay, so we don't know all of the details here.
Correct.
What I'm piecing together is that we were in deep talks with the Detroit Lions to trade them Devontae Freeman, and it makes sense. Kerryon Johnson is on injured reserve. Mm-hmm. The Lions are trying to make a playoff push because they've actually won more than one game, unlike a certain NFL team.
Yeah.
And apparently the Atlanta Falcons didn't like the compensation that Detroit was offering, and it ended up being that apparently Atlanta pulled out of the negotiations. And Devontae Freeman, he's been a very good player for the Atlanta Falcons. I have no idea what the front office is thinking, if that's true, because Devontae Freeman, for as good of a player as he was in 2016 and as good of a player as he was in 2015, he carries with him a $9.5 million cap hit next year, and he's been one of the most unproductive starting running backs in the entire NFL this year. And some of that is definitely attributed to the offensive line for sure. But when you watch Devontae Freeman run, he's definitely a step slower than he was in the past. Age is catching up to him. All of those injuries are no doubt catching up to him, as they would catch up to anybody, especially playing that position. And I guess they decided, we're comfortable paying him $9.5 million next year, when the Atlanta Falcons are the most cash-strapped team in the NFL.
Yep.
The Falcons are carrying 4 running backs. You're not trading him. When the Atlanta Falcons drafted running backs in back-to-back seasons, when they don't even want to give Quadri Allison a chance to even be active on the roster on a Sunday game day, even though the season is pretty much over. I have no idea what they're doing. Even if the compensation was just a 7th round pick, I would have done it, because Devontae Freeman isn't cutting it. He's not worth the money. And it's going to be wild when they have their backs against the wall trying to negotiate Austin Hooper's negotiation or his extension, and they're completely strapped because of stupid things like keeping Devontae Freeman online for $9.6 million. And you can't even cut Devontae Freeman this offseason because he's a $6 million dead cap hit. And I don't think that would even be worth it. So, yeah, there is no outs for Freeman, at least for another year. So you're pretty much anchored down to him this next season. And for as good as he was in the past, he's not worth that money. In this front office, I'm over it. I'm over this front office. I'm over Thomas Dimitroff. I'm over everything. I just like to clean house. I just like to fast forward to the end of the season and completely clean house with everything, because this is a clown show right now.
Yeah, I mean, technically they can cut Devontae Freeman as a post-June 1st cut and save more money next year. But the trade fixes a lot of those issues because you save money this year, which you desperately need to roll over. So like any amount of money they could have saved this year could roll over and help them next year. Even a few $1 million could be a big deal. If they can make Freeman a post-June 1st cut next year, they can actually save the $6.5 million, but it's still $3 million in dead cap, and another $3 million in dead cap in 2021. So that's a significant amount of dead cap still, but they can save a little bit. But the thing about the post-June 1st cuts, of course, is that you don't get the money until June 2nd. So that money, if they traded him now, they could get that money. They could have had it for free agency next year. So if they're going to do a post-June 1st thing, which is likely at this point, I guarantee you the new coaching staff isn't keeping that contract. There's just no chance. There's no chance at all. So that's another issue entirely. So they can cut him at post-June 1st next year, but they can't use that money until after the draft, essentially. So maybe, that money will help pay for the draft class. But it's just, like you said, even if you could just get a day 3 pick for him, just the salary cap dump is worth it, because he's not in your future plans. I mean, I guarantee you a new coach isn't going to want to carry that contract under any circumstance. I don't care who the coach is. I don't care if Kyle Shanahan comes back. He's not keeping Freeman on that contract. So it's puzzling for sure. But Evan, I wanted to give you a chance to get your takes in on that one as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's not a whole lot more I can add. I was listening to Ian Rappaport earlier, was like after he tweeted that, was speaking more on it, and he didn't come out and say it like clearly, but he mentioned, that the compensation, because that's what everybody was concerned with, like what was the compensation? Obviously we turned down, and apparently it was better. He said better than the Kenyon Drake. Kenyon Drake got traded to the Arizona Cardinals from the Dolphins, and it was basically a conditional 2020 6th rounder that could become a 5th rounder. So,
yeah.
I mean, but
so it's probably like a 5th then.
Yeah, I mean, at best, maybe a 4th.
Yeah,
maybe a 5th that could turn into a 4th. I don't know, but I mean, hell, I would have
either one of those. Yeah, either one of those would have been fine. I would have taken a 6th. It's just for the salary dump.
I mean, we may just never know. But also, I found it interesting. He mentioned that they could trade him, I guess, in the off season instead of cutting him. So I don't know. He was mentioning that he said something about like the draft pick has the same amount of value now as it does later on, because I guess technically there's no draft yet either way.
Right.
So maybe that's a possibility. I don't know. But the thing that struck me the most was, and I don't know if it was an opinion of his or somebody told him, but on why the Falcons decided to pull out of it, because apparently they talked for like a week.
Yeah.
That the Falcons decided to keep him to help them win.
Yeah. I hope that's not true.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that's literally his opinion, and he's just not smart, because like, why would you keep him to help you win when, for one, he's not helping you win now, for two, like, you're just going to hurt yourself in the long run.
Yeah.
I mean, nobody wants to admit we're tanking, but you don't trade Mohamed Sanu. I mean, that was a great deal, but they've pretty much showed, they're tanking. So
yeah, I mean, you're not making the moves that you would if you were a contender, basically. Like, there's a difference between tanking and like not trading for players. Like, it's clear the Falcons were selling at the trade deadline. Just nobody wanted to buy. But
I think that's the important thing, too, is it's not just that the Falcons were selling and nobody was buying. Literally nothing happened. I mean, Aqib Talib got traded for like a 5th rounder or something. That was it. And we were hyped up all week, actually for weeks, really, about how exciting it was going to be, and it sucked. Nothing happened. 4 o'clock basically came and went. So I mean, I don't know the specifics if the Falcons just nobody wanted to trade with them, or just nobody wanted to trade at all.
Aqib Talib got traded with a 5th.
Yeah, it was a cap down.
That's what it was.
Yep.
Yeah.
It was like Osweiler-esque, right? Yeah.
Yeah. Meanwhile, we couldn't trade Devontae Freeman. We didn't want to trade Devontae Freeman just as a regular salary dump. And I agree with you, Evan. That's true. Draft picks don't lose value at all. They have the same value now or in the offseason. I'm worried about, will Devontae Freeman have the same value in the offseason as he does now, which isn't very much. But all it takes is one injury, and he's completely untradeable.
Yeah, I mean,
definitely.
I think you're not going to get better value than you would have gotten here, because Detroit was in a bind. They really needed a running back to finish out the season.
And they're pushing for the playoffs too.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's very unlikely that they make it in the NFC.
Too,
but
they don't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So yeah, I don't think there's any scenario where you can get better compensation than if it was a 5th. We don't know, but if it was a 5th or a 6th, even a 7th, God, I would take it. I would take it in a heartbeat, because it's not about the pick, it's about the salary. And if you don't, and part of the reason you needed to trade him now, if you could, is because you can get back the part of his salary that he was owed for the rest of the season, and you can roll that over to next year. Even if it was a couple $1 million, that could make all the difference for a team that's, just really up against the cap. And we're going to get to that a little bit more later, in case you guys haven't had a chance to read it yet. I did a pretty in-depth cap article today analyzing just how bad the cap situation is in 2020, and it's bad, but it's not untenable. You could make it work. It's just, this trade would have helped a lot. It would have made a difference, certainly. And they didn't do it. They did not do it, and it's basically what you said. I think that, as much as we know that the season's over and, Quinn and Dimitrov's careers are basically over, they probably don't see it that way. They're probably hoping for some sort of miraculous turnaround, because, I mean, if I was the head coach, I would be hoping for that too. I'm not just going to phone it in and hope that I, get ready to be fired. I'm going to try to turn it around if I can, certainly. If only as an audition for my next team. And that's probably what they were doing with this move. It doesn't make long-term sense for the team, but I mean, did you really expect, Quinn and Dimitrov to fall on the sword so we could draft Chase Young next year when they're not even on the team? I think maybe that's a little naive to expect. That would have been the right move. It's just not the move that they were ever going to do, and that's probably part of the reason they're going to be gone in 2020. So, the being in that situation where you have to choose between saving yourself or doing what's right for the team means that you're getting fired at the end of the year. So, that's basically
I think that's
where we're
what's
at.
Interesting too, is how people are speculating right now. I mean, a good example is like Austin Hooper. Will the Falcons re-sign him or let him walk? And you mentioned it, is we don't know who's going to be in charge. If they're going to want Austin Hooper, it's not only a new coach. Hopefully it's a new general manager. So who knows really what they're going to want, who they're going to want to keep and get rid of. And
that's why I was so shocked that the Mohamed Sanu trade went through.
Yeah.
Because it was brilliant compensation for us. That's a trade I'd even consider doing if this team was 7-1 and not 1-7, because I mean, a second rounder for Sanu is just insane value. But that's why I don't like having a lame duck front office and a lame duck head coach, because they'll try everything, like you guys mentioned, to save themselves. And it would have been really easy to tell the Patriots to go kick rocks, that we're going to keep Mohamed Sanu and try and win 4 games instead of 2 this season. But I mean, I'm just grateful that trade went through and that there wasn't more damage done than what we've seen so far, because that Devontae Freeman, I think if we had if we had made the right move and fired Dimitrov and Quinn by now, then that Devontae Freeman move would have been done.
Yeah. And I do want to like touch on something that someone asked. Etrol 77. Like, we have been saying that Quinn's on the verge of getting fired. He's on the verge of getting fired every single week until the end of the season. It's possible that it could happen at any time. Based on what Blank has said,
after the Titans game.
well, I don't disagree. For me, it was the Texans game, but I'm not going to disagree. Quibble with you over the week at this point. But like at any time, it could happen. But I agree with what you're saying that based on what Blank has said and the fact that he hasn't fired him yet. And based on what we know, that it's pretty clear that Blank really likes Dan Quinn.
The players do too.
The players do too, apparently. At least probably a majority of the players. Who knows if the whole locker room. But those factors, make it possible that he just rides out the season. And because that's kind of Blank's MO too. He's not a snap decision guy. He's not a guy that's, really, it makes sense to fire and promote an interim guy if you think that's going to make a difference in your season. And in this case, it's simply not. Like, there's not going to be any 9-7 teams making the playoffs this year. The Falcons are 100% out. Even in your wildest fantasy where they win out, they're not making the playoffs over. I mean, it's just so stacked. Like, at this point, we could see the Panthers may not make it. The Vikings may not make it. The Eagles may not make it. Like, I don't think the Lions have any chance unless somebody really falls off a cliff. Like, the Rams may not make it. I mean, you're looking at an NFC West that has an undefeated 49ers team and what's the other team I'm forgetting in the NFC West? It's not the Rams. The Seahawks. Seahawks are 6-2. And then you've got the NFC North with a very good Packers team and a Vikings team that's like right behind them, that's just behind them in tiebreakers. And then you have the Saints, who are probably getting the number 2 seed. There's not a lot of room for anyone else to sneak in there unless someone like falls off a cliff. So it's a stacked NFC. It's just not going to happen. So Blank is probably considering that too. Like, changing coaches here isn't necessarily going to change anything. And unless you're seriously interested in giving one of these guys like a shot as your next head coach, it doesn't really make a ton of sense. Like, it's not necessary. So I guess I understand that aspect of it, but he could be fired at any time. But it could also be the end of the season. I think that's the question really is. It's not when, it's not if, excuse me. Like, he's going to be fired, almost certainly. But it's more of when. Does he make it through the season or does he get fired at some point during the season? And that's the bigger question, in my opinion. But it would, I think it would make everyone feel better if he got fired, like, now. But Arthur Blank cares nothing for our feelings, and he shouldn't. He's the owner of an NFL team. He shouldn't care what fans. If you start caring too much about what fans think, that's not really a good thing either. So
yeah, at this point, I legitimately feel like the only way to really salvage this season would have been to move on and fire him after the Titans game. At this point, when we're 1-7, like, I wouldn't want to fire him right now. I legitimately think keeping Dan Quinn is our best shot at getting a top 5 draft pick, because his defense has been so abysmal that if you're rooting for the tank like I am, and I will shamelessly admit it, I want to tank for Chase Young this season, then yeah, hell yeah, I want to keep Dan Quinn. Hell yeah, I want him to call all of the defensive plays. From here on out, we have nothing to gain anymore.
Yeah.
So call all of those 3-man rushes, drop everyone into coverage. I would like to see some of the younger players get some more burn. That's the main thing I want to be looking out for in the second half of the season. Like, give Jaden Graham a chance here and there.
Yeah.
Allison, Brian Hill, for sure. We got Kendall Sheffield.
Yeah, we got to see Gage a lot, which was nice.
Yeah, Russell Gage. Like, I'm here for the young guys to get a great opportunity in the second half. I can't wait to see what Chris Lindstrom has. He was hurt in that first game, but yeah, right now definitely keep Dan Quinn. Ride this tank. I'd like to beat the Saints. That's the only thing I ask.
At least one game against the Saints.
Just don't get swept. Like, they're coming up close to us in the like all-time head-to-head record. And at this point, this is yeah,
we
like,
got to at least split that one. So
I get into too many Twitter arguments, man. Like, they have to leave me something.
Yes, exactly.
But yeah, other than that, like, other than like the Saints games, lose out. lose out. Give me Chase Young. And even if you miss out on Chase Young, you still have a top 5 draft pick, and that's not nothing.
No, yeah, and it's like, if the Falcons can get into the top 5 with this extra second-round pick they have, that might be enough ammunition to give that extra second to move up, a spot or two to get Young. So, like, a lot of people are like, oh, it's going to take the Falcons dumping all these picks to move up, to get Chase Young. But, like, if they're at pick number 4 and they're afraid that, Washington at 3 is either going to trade that pick or take Young, they could trade Washington an extra second potentially and get up to that pick. Like, getting from, like, pick 4 to 3 is not that expensive. Like, getting from pick 12 to 3 is expensive, but from 4 to 3, that's not a significant jump. And so, if you really want to guarantee Chase Young, you could do that. Personally, and we could kind of segue this into some draft takes, I personally don't think that Washington is going to take another edge guy at the top, because they just took one, and they still have Ryan Kerrigan, who's really good. So, I mean, that would be a huge luxury pick for them, unless they're ready to bail on Montez Sweat after one season, which, Washington's a very poorly run team, but I seriously doubt that they're willing to do that. And we've seen with Cincinnati that they're moving on from Andy Dalton, so that's almost assuredly going to be a quarterback pick. And we know Miami is going all out to try to get their pick of the top quarterback. So if the Falcons can stay at 4, or even if they could move up higher, great. I kind of doubt it, but if they could stay at 4, that is a spot where I think they have a really legit chance at getting Chase Young without needing to trade up. So I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on that at this point.
We need to start pulling for Miami and the Bengals to win some games.
Well, one of them is going to win a game because they play each other. So,
well,
so one of them's winning a game. It's going to be the tank. It's going to be the toilet bowl. Whoever can suck the most gets to keep their winless record. But so yeah, one of them's going to at least win a game. I mean, I don't think the Falcons are going to lose out. So the Falcons are probably going to win two or three games. I don't think a late season rally is out of the question. They love to do that under Dan Quinn. So they're probably looking at finishing like 3-13 or 4-12, and hopefully that's still bad enough to get them a top 5 pick. It probably should be. It just depends on how bad the rest of the.
I'm not expecting us to go 1-15.
No.
I mean, I don't think Tampa Bay will sweep us.
No.
I don't even think Carolina will sweep us, to be honest. Like, Dan Quinn, for some reason, has Carolina's number.
Especially at home, yeah.
Yeah, like, he just, like, is fantastic at beating the Carolina Panthers. The Jacksonville Jaguars are on the schedule. They don't look too lethal. San Francisco 49ers are going to slaughter us. I can't wait to see what Kyle Shanahan
I remember early in the season we thought like, oh yeah, we can win this game, and now they're
it's like, all right, it's the 49ers. It'll be one of those like late season pushes. Mark off 49ers as a W.
Nope.
They look so good. Nick Bosa, looks so good. He had 3 sacks and a pick, which he returned 42 yards last game.
Yeah, ridiculous.
And it's insane that Chase Young is maybe even better than Nick Bosa is. Which is why I really want him. Like, actually, I'm gonna talk myself into saying that possibly we could go 1-15 for Chase Young.
I mean, I wouldn't be against it. We're not gonna go 0-16. So like, as long as you don't go 0-16, it's fine.
I'd be an upgrade over Vic Beasley. Is all I'm.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think they have to find a way to get him, and I think we're going to see whichever coaching staff that comes in emphasize that. And there is a big argument going on right now in the football community in terms of, is pass rusher coverage more important? And the answer is yes, because both are important, and you have to have both to have a really quality defense. You can't have one without the other. And I think the Falcons probably need players at both spots, but you have to have that impact pass rusher to have a good defense. You're just not going to have a quality defense without impact pass rushers. The only ones that seem to be able to do that are the Patriots, who it doesn't matter who they play on defense. We've seen this. So don't take the Patriots example as something you can replicate, because you can't. No one can. Patriots can trot out any person in a football uniform. They could probably trot me out there and still be a top 10 defense. So, it's don't build your expectations based on what the Patriots do. If you're a normal team, you're going to need having that legit top tier pass rusher. It just transforms your defense. We saw it with the 49ers this year. I mean, Arik Armstead was a guy who was like a solid player, but hadn't really been a difference maker for them. And then Chase Young shows up, and all of a sudden he's like a Pro Bowler, like he's dominating. DeForest Buckner looks really great next to in that rotation too. I mean, it's just that transforms your entire defense having that really impact player. And the Falcons have a great running mate for him in Grady Jarrett. And, with Tack, I think Tack McKinley still could turn into something. I think he's shown that he can be good. I just think he's one of those players that kind of goes as the team goes. So if the team is good, I think Tack could look like a really good player. If the team is bad, I think he kind of phones it in. We did see him play really hard against the Seahawks. I don't know if Dan Quinn got in his face or something and jazzed him up, but we saw him make a couple good plays against Seattle, and the potential is there.
Tack always plays hard. I've never questioned Tack's motor. It's just he doesn't play smart all the time.
Yeah,
like he overplays his hand, so to speak.
Yeah,
and we saw it. Case in point was Game 1 against Minnesota, where he was just overplaying it and just completely abandoning the edge.
Yeah,
and Minnesota was absolutely annihilating us with those outside runs his way. But I mean, I agree with Tack McKinley. I think Tack McKinley is going to be better if he had a better running mate on the opposite side. I think having a legitimate pass rusher would enhance Tack's game as well, because Vic Beasley is just useless out there. He's just robbing us of $12.8 million. It's still insane.
Well, and don't get me started on that. Okay.
And I mean, we had an article published about that too.
Yep.
The past week, Matt Chambers published a great article talking about how Thomas Dimitroff in the front office may have given Vic Beasley that fifth-year option so that they wouldn't anger his representatives, who also his agency, which also represents, I think it was Grady Jarrett and Julio Jones.
Deion Jones, I think. Yeah.
Deion Jones?
Yeah, I think so.
Well,
that might have been Deion and Julio.
Yeah, something like that. Some group of those high-profile players.
And
two of those guys, yeah.
If you're letting an agent hold you hostage, that in itself is an absolutely fireable offense right there, and that's an absolute joke. It's legitimate. I was legitimately angry when I read that, when I found out about that, because at this point, what are you doing? You don't even deserve respect as a general manager if you're letting someone do that to you, if you're paying Vic Beasley all of that money because you're afraid of making an agent mad. You're giving an agent power over your team, and that's legitimately. After I read that, I'd love nothing more than for Thomas Dimitroff to be gone from this organization completely. Nothing, no Rich McKay treatment where he wasn't a good GM and he was promoted to whatever figurehead role Rich McKay is in right now. I want him completely gone from the organization.
Yeah, I think the difference between Rich McKay and Thomas Dimitroff is that I think people actually liked Rich McKay. He wasn't a good GM, but I think people actually liked him. He seems to be very respected by the NFL community. I mean, he's the chair of the competition committee and all this. So he had that going for him. He was a likable guy. It seems to me that Thomas Dimitroff is not the most likable guy. And when you hear things he's getting bent over by the agency, that you can't have that. You can't have that on your team, because if that's happening, every agency is just going to do the same thing to him now. And your agent is owned by, or your GM is now owned by and beholden to an agency. And I just don't know how you fall for that if you're Dimitroff. Do you really think they're going to turn down your money because you cut another player? CAA has hundreds of players in the NFL. Are you expected to sign all of them, or they're not going to sign a contract with you? It's just ridiculous. Call their bluff, for God's sake. Did you think they weren't going to sign in Atlanta if you didn't pay Vic Beasley $13 million? I mean, it's just ridiculous on its face. So I don't know. Dimitroff got played, and he's overstayed as well.
And this is also the NFL. This isn't the NBA where your player, if he has enough years of experience, he can leave as an unrestricted free agent and you can't do anything. The NFL, the NFL Players Association has been completely bent over by the owners in CBA negotiations over and over again, like to the point where it's completely ridiculous how little power the NFL players have for playing this sport. All of their contracts are not guaranteed, and you have the franchise tag. So you can essentially give yourself 2 extra years of just like maintaining leverage over this player after his contract already expires. So you had the franchise tag too. And I know it's not ideal to have used it, but I mean, yeah, call their bluff. Like, what you think Grady Jarrett would have rejected? How much did he get? $15 million a year because you didn't want to pay Vic Beasley $13 million? I'm sure even Grady Jarrett would have been like, are you kidding me?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you're 100% right, because it's like you still have the leverage of the franchise tag. Like, you could always fall back on that if you needed to. So the team has all the leverage. I mean, that's the nature of the franchise tag. So it makes even less sense. And, maybe he was banking on the relationship to help him get that team-friendly deal done with Deion Jones. I mean, I think we can all agree that Deion signed for less than we thought he was worth, which is nice, I guess, but you're still out $13 million to Vic Beasley, and that totally hamstrung your free agency to where you basically, all you could do was add Alan Bailey before training camp, and that was basically the limit of what you could do on defense. You signed a bunch of guards, which in hindsight doesn't seem to be that bad of an idea because, half of our offensive line is injured every week, it seems like. But it's just, you can't keep neglecting the defense, and then the only money you invest in the defense is in Vic Beasley, who's, a bust, a colossal bust. And it was clear as soon as he got that paycheck that he wasn't even interested in playing, either. Like, we've talked about it ad nauseum on here. Like, he didn't want to go to Von Miller's pass rush summit. He didn't come to OTAs to work with Quinn, and Quinn made it a point of emphasis, that he was going to work with him this offseason, and Beasley basically gave him the middle finger and said, no, I'm not interested. I'm going to work out by myself, and look at what that did for him. He's terrible. He's worse than last year. So it's like, this guy has shown you every step of the way that he's just not that interested in playing football, that he doesn't really care about getting better, that he's here to collect a check. And he seems like a nice enough guy or whatever, but this is the NFL. Like, it's a business. You can't just keep around a nice guy because you hope you could turn things around. Like, how you would have, if maybe money does motivate him, but you don't motivate someone who's driven by the financial goal by giving them $13 million guaranteed. He could slack off and he could be like, I'm not even going to play, and there's nothing they could do because if they cut him, they still owe him every penny. So you could have cut him and re-signed him for a lot less money and been like, all right, prove to us you're worth another contract. That's what I think a sane person would have done. But instead, we have, maybe it was DQ, maybe it was TD, maybe it was a joint decision by the two of them, maybe it was the agency, I don't know. But whoever's decision it was the worst decision of the offseason. I mean,
and we don't know, of course, the full picture, and I always try and say that because we don't. So it's impossible to know without knowing all of the details, but just going on what we've heard and what's been reported, and I think it was Jeff Schultz over at The Athletic who reported that, and Jeff Schultz is a fantastic journalist, so there's definitely something there if Jeff Schultz reports it. And I mean, it's just a completely ridiculous situation, and what kind of a message does that send to the rest of the team, to where you're bringing Vic Beasley back, you're hurting the team. This is someone who was already in the tunnel in that Saints game last year, and I'll never forget that. This man was basically quitting and hitting the showers before the game was even over at that point. I mean, what kind of a message are you sending your team? It's twofold. One, it's that the players pretty much have, and the agents pretty much have control over your front office. And two, it's that you don't really care that much about getting better, because if you cared about getting better in the offseason, you would have told Vic Beasley to go kick rocks and brought in a suitable replacement. Can you imagine ever in a million years that a Bill Belichick run team would have a player controlling anything over the front office? And I'm using Bill Belichick because he's the gold standard. Like, I guarantee you this kind of stuff doesn't happen over in New England, and that's one of the reasons they have 6 Super Bowl rings, and all we have to our name is the most epic choke job in NFL history.
Yeah. Yeah, and I do want to give you a chance to talk too, Evan, because we've been talking a lot.
Oh no, I'm pretty much being like these people watching. I'm just enjoying it.
Just
to be
like,
honest.
yep, yep.
I mean, I
Agreed.
really ain't got nothing to add.
Yeah.
That was perfect. I think also I like seeing how, the first part of the season, DQ was pretty much taking all the heat, and he deserved to take heat for how the performance was on defense, especially. But seeing recently how Dimitrov's taken his share, I mean, you even saw that video where Arthur Blank was talking after the Seahawks game, and he mentioned, there's other head coaches in this building, but he then also mentions there's other GMs in this building, to basically show, there's not only one hot seat, there's 2 hot seats here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I'm just kind of over. I mean, I can't really add more than what you guys were saying, but I'm just kind of over this whole front office. As you were alluding to, that story is honestly a joke. Not the story itself,
right?
But I mean, no,
like what it said, like the actual content exactly. Is like, this is crazy. Yeah,
it's honestly sad. Like, it's pathetic. And mentioning, the Patriots. Yeah, that's, as much as people don't like the Patriots, that's why you got to respect them, because they will cut you any day. They don't care who you are. All they care about at the end of the day is winning. And that's why they take risks like signing Antonio Brown and stuff like that, where we're basically, while they're over there busy doing that, we're pretty much over here getting held hostage by agents. Apparently, it's a bad look. I'll tell you that, because if word goes around and other agents are, in on it, it's like, what else has happened? If they're allowing this, and Dimitrov, it's not his first year. If it was like a newbie GM or something, this guy's been around. He knows what's going on. But you're gonna, I mean, and has there ever been a more controversial player in Falcons history? I mean, there's been, Ray Edwards and Croy Bierman and stuff like that, but like Vic Beasley, I mean, he literally led the league in sacks one year, and then pretty much universally prior to this season, literally the fan base from the very most bottom of the fan base to the top of Falcons media, everyone was like, "Don't bring this dude back," and sure enough, they did, and then it's like, and of course it was a mess. Everybody saw it coming.
Yeah.
It's a bad look. I mean, I don't know how you don't get fired just based on that story alone. It's embarrassing.
Right. And you're absolutely right. Like, I mean, it was honestly so shocking that he didn't get cut that, like, I think Adnan and I had to do a spur of the moment show, because we were like, holy crap, he didn't get cut? Okay, I guess we gotta try to figure out what's going on here. It was such a no-brainer move. Even if he was he had 5.5 sacks last year, that's not nothing. That's a player you might be interested in re-signing, but not for $13 million. $13 million is premier pass rusher money. We could have taken that money. Yeah, we could have taken that money and given it to Preston Smith, who's having a great season in Green Bay, and actually gotten a return.
I mean, get it. In this perspective, a lot of people recently talking about Austin Hooper, who is playing as one of the top 3 tight ends in the league based on statistics and stuff like that. He's definitely, I think we can all agree, taking his game to the next level in terms of reliability. And, Matt Ryan's finally got a good pass catcher. And people complaining because there's if he resigned, his yearly cap hit might be $10 million. But they were totally willing to pay Vic Beasley this amount of money, $3 million or whatever more. It's absurd. For the production you're getting, it's embarrassing.
Mm-hmm.
And they knew it going into it.
They did.
What did you think? He was going to turn it around?
They hoped
that. He literally had to lead the league in sacks again for it to be you know what? Good move.
Yeah.
It doesn't make
for
any
it to
sense.
work out, it had to be so good, and it was just the chances of that happening were so small.
And even if he came out and had 15 sacks this season, we still couldn't afford to bring him back on a long-term contract anyway. Exactly. So the only feasible way that this would have ended up being successful would have been had he led the league in sacks pretty much ignited our Super Bowl run, and had we won the Super Bowl, and then it's like, all right, this was successful, good luck moving forward with your $20 million a year, Vic. We'll take the 3rd round comp pick as it goes, and we'll take our Super Bowl trophy. But I mean, it's not even close to that happening. And right. Let's be honest, that was never going to happen. Not even in any parallel universe was Vic Beasley going to ignite our Super Bowl run this season.
Right. Yeah, I mean, at this point, it's been so long since his good season. Like, I think in 2017, he didn't have a great year. So going into 2018, they rolled the dice and they were like, all right, we're going to stand pat. We're going to hope that Beasley can return. He'd had one down year, and he was, before that, he had his great 2016. So, like, 2018, it's like, okay, like, this is a calculated risk. He's still not making that much money. I mean, he's first-round pick, but, like, it's not that ridiculous. That made sense. It was the wrong move in hindsight, obviously, but it made sense. But this year, it didn't make sense because we'd seen 2 seasons of bad. The last good season was, 3 years ago, and he's had 1 out of 4 that's been good. So it just doesn't make sense on any level. It was, maybe it was the agency thing. Maybe it was a pride thing. That wouldn't shock me. I mean, that kind of Dimitrov kind of strikes me as that kind of guy who refuses to ever give up and admit that he was wrong. It just seems like the vibe that I'm feeling is that, the Dimitrov might be even less safe than Quinn somehow, because of all of his mistakes this offseason in particular.
And I just want to address something in the chat that we've talked plenty about how bad Devondre Campbell has been. And Devondre Campbell, like, we completely agree that Campbell should not be playing for the Atlanta Falcons, or not starting at all. I want to see Foyoluakin start over him, and I don't want him back next season at all. But the main difference between Vic and Campbell is that Vic is making $12.8 million this year, and Devondre Campbell, let me pull up his salary this season. Campbell is making $2.1 million. So that's the main reason we're going after Vic Beasley, even though we have talked about Campbell and Devontae Freeman plenty of times before about how they're not cutting it either, and how neither of them should be starting for the Falcons, and how personally I don't want either of them to be on the roster next season, but Devontae Freeman probably will because of salary cap purposes.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be rough, and I do want to get to the salary cap a little bit before we get out of here. We're going to have all offseason talk about it too, but, you mentioned it, like, Freeman's very difficult to cut next year. They would have to basically either designate him as a post-June 1st or wait until after June 1st, or, possibly trade him. There's a way, maybe they could make that work, but, he's going to come with a lot of dead money one way or another. There's just, the Falcons are so up against it, and this is part of the consequence of having so many big contracts, with Julio, Matt Ryan, Desmond Trufant, Jake Matthews, Grady Jarrett, Deion Jones. Like, all of these contracts add up, and the Falcons are in a rough spot next year. They have only 40 players under contract for 2020, and they have about $1 million in cap space, assuming they keep almost all of their space this year in reserve. Because they need that rollover cap just to be positive going into the offseason. That does not include the draft class. The draft class is probably going to cost them about $8 million by itself. So, it's very dicey. There are some cuts they can make. Alan Bailey saves them $4.5 million. Luke Stalker, $2.6 million. Tyson Braylo, between $3.75 and $4.75 million, depending on when they cut him. These are all guys you can save money on. The one that I don't like the idea of so much that is a possibility is Keanu Neal. He's on a 5th-year option. That's $6.46 million with no dead cap if you cut him before the start of the league year. I don't think that that's something they're going to do, but when they bring in a new coaching staff and GM, they might not have any loyalty to Neal whatsoever, and they could just say, hey, play on a lesser contract or go somewhere else.
And you can also talk with a few players about restructuring. Like last offseason, Matt Ryan restructured his deal to free up some cap. I think both Ricardo Allen and Jake Matthews did as well. There's always loopholes to get around in terms of the salary cap. So we'll have positive salary cap like when we need to, but we won't. Don't expect us to sign any like big time free agents.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, basically they're going to be hoping to sign Hooper. That's basically the only big-time free agent they're going to be involved with. And they can do it by, giving him a big salary, but giving him a big signing bonus basically is the way they're going to do it. They could probably get his, he's probably going to end up making like $9 million a year or something like that, just slightly below what Kelsey's making. That's going to be a difficult contract to pull off, but if you give him a big signing bonus and keep the base salary in year one low, you could sign him for like $4 or $5 million probably to make that work. But before June, like they can free up. I have them freeing up in this article about $13 million in space for free agency. So that's going to have to cover Hooper and any other actual free agency moves they want to make prior to June 2nd. Then after June 1st, if they cut Freeman, cut Ricardo Allen, and cut James Carpenter after June 1st. They can save another $14.25 million, and $8 million of that's going to have to go to paying the draft class. But that is a little bit more money to play around with, and they're going to be right up against it. I mean, they're not going to have the pick of a lot of good veterans. They're probably going to have to sign a lot of cheap guys. The draft class, if they add more picks, they could potentially fill out the roster with more draft picks. But they're probably going to have 7 or 8 million to fill 10, 12 roster spots. So they're going to be depending probably on a lot of cheap veterans and possibly some more undrafted guys. And it's going to be dicey. There's no way to get around that. It's going to be dicey next year in terms of the cap. So there's no good way to handle it, but it's not as dire as I think some people are perceiving it as. Like they're not in danger of not being able to sign their draft class, or they're not going to have to start unloading these big contracts just to get under the cap. Like that's not going to happen. It's not that desperate of a situation, but they're going to be very limited with what they can do in free agency essentially. So it's going to be rough, but survivable, and we'll dig more into that. We'll dig more into some draft takes as the season goes on, because we're sure not going to be talking about the playoffs, I can tell you that. So it's disappointing, obviously, but, yeah. I mean, Solera, I don't disagree with you that it's going to take 2 drafts to really get this team back on the map, but, I also think there is enough talent, especially on offense, that if they get like a really good offensive mind here, like say they get Lincoln Riley or something similar to that, and the offense gets back on track and is scoring 30 plus again, they could win a lot of games as long as the defense isn't a train wreck again. But I don't know that we should be expecting them to be contenders next year, but I think we could expect them to be better than whatever they finish this year, which is probably going to be between 3-13 and 4-12. So yeah, it's gonna be a rough season, no doubt. Did you guys have any final takes you want to get up before we wrap up here?
I just want to, add on to what you're saying. I think the thing that gives us a leg up compared to the teams like the Redskins and the, I don't know if Miami's going to fire their coach, but all the teams that, eventually will have no head coach and stuff like that is, if you're walking in as a head coach, you're walking in with a MVP quarterback, Julio Jones, some pieces already in place compared to these other places where, Washington's got a quarterback where, who knows if he's going to be good. Like they already invested a first round pick on a quarterback, is what I'm saying. Yeah. Where we already have pieces in place that you can add your own pieces and it can be your team, but you still have all these solid, like you're not going to have to struggle to be like, well, who are we going to have at quarterback? So technically the team could, if you get a good offensive mind in there, you're probably not going to get another Kyle Shanahan or something like that who can just like instantly, turn the team around. But I think a best case scenario would be maybe sneaking into the playoffs or something.
Yeah.
But I think the team's well built to where they could, if they make the right moves, I'll put it that way, where they could, also do a Falcons thing and not make the right moves and waste what's left of Matt Ryan and Julio Jones's prime years. So, but we're halfway through this awful season, so there's still some more time to figure out what's going to happen.
Yeah. I mean, that's always a danger with the Falcons, certainly. But yeah, I mean, I think if the offensive line is healthier next year, Chris Lindstrom, I think he looked good in his start. I mean, that's not really much to judge off of, but maybe he'll come back towards the end of this year and kind of solidify the line. We could see another high draft pick invested in the line. I'm almost certain we'll see at least a day 2 pick invested. So either they're going to get a new center, or they're going to get probably a center guard that can play guard next to Mac and then take over for Mac eventually. This is an offensive line that should be better than it is this year. They've dealt with a lot of injuries, and that's certainly delayed what should have been a big rebuild. McGarry, it's his first season. Rookie tackles are just, it's tough to depend on rookie tackles. I don't think we can really draw. McGarry's been good enough that I think he can definitely improve. He hasn't been a total train wreck. He's gotten beat by some really good pass rushers. I mean, yeah, J.J. Watt took his lunch. Big shocker there. I would be upset if I was a Texans fan if J.J. Watt wasn't beating rookie right tackle. But, I think they have the pieces in place on that offensive line where if they get a better offensive mind in here and they have a little bit more health on that line, this could be a much improved offense next year. This should be one of the best offenses in the league. It still could be next season. And then they just need to get the defense playing competently. They don't need them to be top 10. They don't need them to be top 15. They just need to be in that 15 to 20 range, and that'll be enough for them to win a lot of games. Look at Baltimore. We're used to Baltimore being this defensive powerhouse with a crappy offense. They flipped the script this year. That offense is electric, and the defense is not very good, but it's good enough to keep them in games, and the offense just does the rest. And that's what the NFL is kind of moving towards. There's not very many elite defensive teams left. The Patriots being one example. The Bills are a big defense first team, and that's not working out so well for them this year. It's probably more to do with Josh Allen than anything. But and then we've seen the 49ers just explode on the scene with this elite defense. But it took them 3 years of being terrible to get the pieces together to actually have that defense where it is. And you can't always depend on having. You probably shouldn't depend on having 3 top 5 picks in a row to get the defense right. I don't think that's a strategy that anybody really wants to see. Obviously, if it culminates in a Super Bowl, we'd be willing to tolerate it. But, you should be hoping to do better and just pick well. But there's a lot of ways the Falcons can do this draft. Adding that extra second is huge. It's basically going to be a third because I think we can all agree the Patriots are probably going to be in the Super Bowl. So, it's either going to be the second to last or the last pick of the second round. But having it be a second is important in terms of trade value. It's important. It's nice because they're probably going to have a very early second and then a late second to go along with their very early first. And with those 3 picks, you can get 3 starters. I mean, you should be able to. You're going to have probably another pick immediately after that at the top of the third round. So they're going to be picking, 4 times in the top 100 at least. You can really take a stab at your biggest issues, especially on defense. And you can afford to go another offensive line pick there too because you have those picks. They're all going to be in that top 100 range, and if they nail it, you could really turn around with an excellent top of your draft class. But you have to nail it.
All it takes is one great draft to change your fortunes. In 2016, we had it. The Saints had it in 2017. And remember what Arthur Blank said ahead of the 2016 draft. I want 3 starters.
Yeah.
3.
So make sure he needs to say that again this year because that ended up working out okay. So.
Oh, that ended up working 4 in that draft.
Yeah. So yeah, it is what it is. We're gonna talk you guys through it all off season. This is gonna be an interesting, hopefully very interesting draft because of where the Falcons are positioned. They have that extra pick. We could be talking about a very impactful class, assuming they don't botch it. And they're probably going to have a new GM too. So we're going to be totally in the dark in terms of what they like to do, what type of picks what type of players they go after. It could all be flipped over on its head because we were so comfortable. I was able to actually predict a draft pick exactly, because we knew Dan Quinn and Dimitroff so well going into this draft. It was inevitable. And unfortunately, all of my time spent studying their tactics is going to be thrown out the window. But as long as they're good, I don't care. That's fine. But yeah, guys, before we do sign off, do want to remind you if you could throw a like to the video, that helps other people on YouTube find it. That helps it get publicized out there. So help other Falcons fans or other football fans if they're interested in this type of in-depth analysis to see the show. So if you don't mind throwing a like, we appreciate that. And then if you're not already subscribed, do hit that subscribe button as well, and you will get the notifications for when these shows are going up. They're Wednesday nights, as you can see, 8-10 p.m. And then post-game shows on Sunday. Obviously, won't be one this week. It's the bye week, so enjoy your stress-free football Sunday. But we'll be back to it after that. But yeah, guys, that's going to about wrap it up for us. Before we go, though, do want to thank my co-hosts. First off, Mr. Adnan Ikic. He's at Say Which Way on Twitter. Adnan, anything that you're working on you'd like to plug?
I would like to plug my Halloween article that went live like last week. But if you haven't gotten a chance to read it, I'm kind of biased, but I recommend it. I think it was written well. It's called
good.
Matt Ryan goes through the trials of Dan Quinn's Inferno, so I tried to put in some humor and tried to make it as funny as possible while keeping it real. And I think you'll enjoy the late plot twist that I write in that. So if you haven't checked it out, it's some perfect reading material for Halloween, which is tomorrow.
Yes, definitely check that out. It's funny. It's a little bit creepy. It's good. It's good stuff, guys. Definitely going to want to check that out. It's very frightening if you're a Falcons fan, certainly. So, also with us tonight, Mr. Evan Birchfield, a.k.a. Evan Breaking News Birchfield. He's on Twitter at the very easy to remember at Evan Birchfield. Evan, any other breaking news you're cooking up or anything else you'd like to plug?
Nothing currently. But yeah, definitely do read his article because, I don't know if it showed me on my face on there, but it's the second it popped in my head, I was thinking back to that article. It's funny as shit. So make sure to go read that after the show ends. Nothing specific. I usually do a Twitter recap, but obviously there's no game. Thanks for reading our content at thefalcoholic.com, watching all the different podcasts or listening to all the different podcasts. These two, everybody, but specifically these two, since they're right here, everybody does great work. What you see on here, they really are genuine. You're not getting fed any BS from us. Couldn't find two better guys to sit here and listen to. And, those times where I wasn't speaking, it wasn't because I had something to say and you guys were talking. It was because this is fun. I like just sitting here, listening and stuff. So, yeah. Before I ramble on all, what was that?
We've been boxing you out,
Yeah. And I was gonna say, make sure to check out the podcast with DW, and Evan is his co-host on there, and they do an absolutely wonderful job on there. So, check out the podcasts that get dropped, because Evan and DW are fantastic on that as well.
Yes, definitely do that, guys, for sure.
And then just have a, I don't know the ages of the people watching, but, have a safe and happy Halloween and enjoy your stress-free weekend of no Falcons game.
Yes.
Oh, and you can find me at Evan Birchfield on Twitter.
Yeah, very easy to remember. Yeah, guys, I am Kevin Knight at Falcoholic Kevin on Twitter. I will be on 929 The Game tomorrow, I guess on Mark Zeno's show to talk about the cap. That'll
I don't think he's on 92.9 anymore.
Is he not? Okay.
It's some other
whatever station it is.
Athletic or something like
that.
Yeah.
Well, what time?
It's at 2:30 to 2:40, I think. So, whatever show that is. I don't live in Atlanta, so I don't actually know the names of the stations, but
I think it's Athletic X or X Athletic.
Okay.
So if you're familiar with the radio stuff there.
If you live in Atlanta, you can check that out. I'm sure it'll be up online at some point too. But we're gonna go over some of the same stuff we talked about tonight with the salary cap and all that. So check that out. And then if you really want the deep dive, you can read my article that I published today. That goes into some of the cuts they can make and how it's not as bad as it may seem in terms of the cap. So check that out, guys. But otherwise, thank you guys so much for tuning in. Like I said, if you don't mind leaving a like, if you're not already subscribed, do that too. And the show's on Twitter at Falcoholic Live too if you do the Twitter thing. So we appreciate all the interaction and all the stuff. You can send in if you're not going to make the show and you want a question answered, you can send it in on Twitter too. We try to answer some of those during that as well. And then obviously the Falcoholic.com. It's but just simply the best site. We break news now too, so there's really nothing. There's no reason you shouldn't just go to the Falcoholic for all your content needs. But
one-stop shop.
One-stop shop, guys.
And I mean, it's like Evan said, everyone does a fantastic job, and everyone's just so genuine on there. And I mean, we all really enjoy each other's companies. None of those Twitter interactions are fabricated.
No, this is all fake. This is all fake. We actually hate each other.
Let me add too. Everything we're talking about. Nobody's telling us what to say, what to write. We're all we're fans. What makes it special? We're fans like you guys. It's just we're writing about it. That's the only difference. So.
Yeah, and if you guys could read like some of what we say in our group chats, like everyone genuinely enjoys each other's company, and I don't think that's something you can fake.
No.
And I've been on sites before where like you didn't really like everyone, and it just kind of felt. I'm not naming names, but I mean, half of our staff,
unconfirmed,
like,
yeah. But no, I mean we only are like made up of half, ex fan-sided employees. So just throwing that shade out.
We'll talk about that one dead period, late June or July day.
Yes, exactly.
Where it's just like not much content. We'll get into some of our past history.
Yeah, the beef squashing episode or whatever. So. Yep.
We'll just
look forward to that one, guys. Yeah.
Only the real ones will hear it, though, because it's a dead period.
Yeah. But yeah, guys, we do appreciate you. And we just love conversing with you. It makes it easier to get through the season. It's good to be able to have some folks to talk with and hang out with, even in the midst of this disgusting abomination of a season. But it's still football, so it could be a lot worse. But we'll get through it, and then hopefully
part of being a fan.
It is. You got to deal with the bad and the good. So we'll get through it, and hopefully there'll be a better one next year. And either way, we'll be here. So enjoy the rest of your night, guys. Thanks for tuning in, and we will see you next Wednesday, 8:10 p.m. And until then, enjoy the rest of your week. Enjoy your stress-free Sunday, and enjoy your Halloween if you indulge. So have a good night, folks.